you call it perfect.
This is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek, and Workweek has covered the struggle of transit workers during COVID, the whole struggle to protect the health and safety of transit workers, what they faced during the COVID pandemic, including in Chicago as well, and also the continuing attacks on transit workers and violent attacks on transit workers, the very dangerous conditions for transit workers in many cities, and also the struggle for democracy, political democracy, union democracy inside transit worker locals. And we've covered the retaliation against union leaders and activists by management at different transit agencies. And joining us today is Robert Thomas. He's a CTA bus driver, and he's with Chicago Transit Justice Coalition. And also Erek Slater, the executive board member of ATU 241, and ran for president and had a whole struggle, and was arrested actually while he was running for president by management to prevent him from speaking to the workers. So welcome to Workweek, both of you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having us.
So Robert, why don't you talk about the work that you do, your effort to defend drivers in the transit system?
My name is Robert Thomas. I'm a bus operator at CTA. I've been a bus operator since 2016, part-time 1 year and full-time for 6 years. The work that we do is very important in Chicago. We move the whole city. You know, we get called city workers by family and friends, but we really don't enjoy any of the benefits that the city workers enjoy. And in regards to wages, a lot of our wages, we don't get to see a lot of our wages. Actually, we only get to see about 50% of our wages. And the company and the union have seemed to come up with a deal that sees that has all these deductions taken out: healthcare, trust, pension, the list goes on. I'm a part of the Chicago Transit Justice Coalition, which is a volunteer group of co-workers within ATU Local 241 and 308 that empower the workers to fight back, learn their constitution, learn their rights. And we hold protests, legal protests off the clock because we believe that workers should stand up and fight back. And our greedy employer, you know, we ask for simple things such as bathrooms, which we still don't have 75 years later. It's pretty sad that we still have to fight for bathrooms, brick and mortar bathrooms. They have set up porta potties for us, which is horrible for female and anybody, frankly, to use in the winter, in the cold months. No lighting, no heat, no security. You know, it's just bad all around. So the Justice Coalition is advocating for brick and mortar bathrooms and full-time jobs for all. We work for a company that's a billionaire. It's got billions since COVID started, and they should be able to provide full-time jobs for all. But it's, you know, this grip that they got on part-time workers, it's almost 1,000 part-time workers in the customer assistant role at the train booths alone. So we need to fight for full-time jobs for all so we can get our workers out of poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And Erek, you also have been taking up issues of health and safety workers' conditions for CTA drivers, and you got pushback from management.
Yeah, I've been a bus operator for the Chicago Transit Authority for 17 years now. I've been fired twice. I was part of organizing efforts for many organizations like the Chicago Transit workers. We had a council we put together. We did a rider driver alliance, and we've definitely had many rank and file worker groups that have been trying to reform our union and fight for working conditions against our employer in the city. So it's been a long fight. I've been fired twice after I was elected by my coworkers to be a shop steward or executive board member. I was fired twice. We're currently fighting The second termination, again, fighting for the rights for workers to be able to speak to each other at the workplace. The last termination happened when I was simply reading the position of our international president in the aftermath of George Floyd being murdered, and our rights to work in safe working conditions and not have to be forced into working in unsafe conditions. We're really facing that right now with the violence against us, especially the frontline workers. Our union, as Robert was talking about, we have 2 amalgamated transit unions. There's many other craft unions that represent workers at the Chicago Transit Authority and other unions in PACE, but we're like the big union, 241. We have about 10,000 families if you include our retirees. And we have all kinds of different job classifications, as Robert was talking about. On the rail side, the customer assistance, and I absolutely support this slogan for full-time jobs for all, equal work for equal pay. And we've been fighting on these issues. The burning ones right now, I would say, Robert was talking about them, and I hope he goes into more of them. I've been fired for the last 2.5 years. I still drive the shuttle buses, but I don't drive the CTA buses until I'm returned to work. So I hope Robert can talk more about some of the violence we face. Just a few days ago, there was one of our buses was riddled with bullet holes in the driver's area. It looked like the driver may have been targeted. Fortunately, they look like they haven't been major damage. Just a few weeks ago, we had a bus operator who was taken off the bus and beaten up. And this is just the stuff that makes the news. And this is just a daily thing that affects us. We're not backed up by our employer. When something happens, and many things happen on our buses because of the social crisis in society, the closing down of many of the necessary social services we need, the lack of good union scale jobs for us and working people, that those problems come on our bus, and we're just trying to drive down the street and they come after us to a bit. And then when something happens, our employer doesn't back us up, and they see us as an opponent, and that's very much so. I hope some of the other workers on the call can talk about that more too.
Well, this issue of part-time work, these are public jobs. What does it mean to be a part-time worker, Robert, in the Chicago Transit Authority, and how can they survive as a part-time worker?
Well, it's hard to survive as a part-time worker because they got the Second Chance program, which is a program that the CTA created along with the union to give, and I believe in this wholeheartedly. I think people who have been who have went to jail deserve a second chance at employment, and a lot of employers won't hire them. So CTA came up with this program there to employ people who have went to jail for whatever reason. But the issue is the pay. They start at $15.40 an hour. It's horrible. They're working with chemicals all night long, and they work overnight shift. There's no day shift for these workers. They get no health benefits. They get no dental. They get no vision. And they have to pay $75 a month in union dues. So, you know, we have hundreds of these workers in the Second Chance program. Same thing with the customer service assistants at the train booths all across the system in the city. You know, we have members in our Justice Coalition who have been part-time for 9 years, no benefits, $19 an hour. That's what they're making. And it's just, it's horrible that the employer can keep somebody part-time for 9 years when clearly the money is there to turn them over full-time.
And as a union made a political issue of this, I mean, I know the Teamsters, whose contract expired in July, had a national strike over part-time work. You can't survive on part-time wages. Has this been an issue of the CTA 241? And it's educating the public and the working class of Chicago that you can't have part-time workers working for the CTA and expect them to survive on those kind of wages.
Well, as far as I know, the union is not making this an issue. I went to one of the union meetings a couple years ago, and they said, "Oh, in the last 5 years, we've turned over 100 workers," and I'm like, "That's not That's not something to brag about. 100 workers in 5 years, please. Uh, so no, the union is not making this an issue. And we have one of our coworkers who has a radio show. Her name is Cheryl Sistrunk, and she's been part-time for almost 10 years. And she has a radio show called And Popping Off, where she talks about this every week, every Friday. And she's been talking about it years. CTA has the money to turn over full-timers in these positions that she is in. She's a customer service assistant at the booth as well. And, you know, they get violence just like the bus operators do. You know, people, mentally unstable people want to fight them, you know, or customers, intoxicated customers, all kind of situations. Just today, I was verbally assaulted by a man that I picked up on the bus, and you know, I let him ride free. He didn't pay. And then when he got off, he looked at me. He said, "You got a problem?" And I said, "What you talking about, man?" He said, "You want to get shot?" I said, "No, I don't want to get shot. Do you want to go to jail?" "I just got out." That's what he told me. And, you know, we got a lot of people in the city that are mentally unstable. And unfortunately, the mental health clinics were closed under the Rahm Emanuel administration. But I'm with Mayor Brandon Johnson. I hope that we can get some of these mental health clinics open, because we really surely need it in the transit world.
And Erek, you've also taken up the issue of health and safety on the buses and had a whole experience with COVID, where drivers were not being protected, weren't getting en masse, and many drivers were dying across this country.
Yeah, we were trying to lead a nationwide, really international effort at the early days of COVID, to get proper protective gear. And we were meeting with transit workers in New York who were a few weeks ahead of us, who had over 100 transit workers who died during COVID. And we were working with some of you guys over on the West Coast as well, who were a few weeks after that. And what I saw over and over again is the employer sort of looks at from high and is trying to protect its interests. And it's not actually on the buses like we are. You know, it's not getting impacted by the pandemic. Our family members getting the virus, the passengers getting it from us, and vice versa. And they were very concerned about, you know, getting lawsuits. So they wouldn't do, for instance, simple measures of doing testing on property, voluntary testing on the property, which would have really helped to mitigate the virus itself, not just among us as transit workers. So what I've become convinced is that we need to have the people who actually drive and do the work, maintain the buses and trains. We need to be making the decisions on health and safety questions directly. We can do that through our organizations, such as our unions, where our power is multiplied. We're not just picked off one by one, but I believe also we need to coordinate with other social justice fighters and organizations, community organizations inside the city, working class organizations that want good transit service, that want good full-time union jobs for our youth and our young adults, for everyone in the working class. There really is plenty of work that needs to be done, but they're deliberately making this work extremely intolerable. People come in, Robert can talk more about this. People come in, they see it for 2 weeks, a month. They're like, "Oh my goodness, this is unsafe. This is disrespectful to me as a human being, as a worker, and the employer doesn't have my back." Now, in a very different force can come together and fight for a publicly organized public transportation and other social needs, and fight for good union jobs as part of a rebuilding campaign of the necessities of life we need, like such as public transportation.
The issue of democracy, a democratic union, and membership power, rank and file power, and membership political freedom, how is that related to your work conditions?
Oh, it's very relatable, but unfortunately, our current union that we have, they don't want us to have democracy. They don't want the members involved. They make it super hard for us to come to the meeting that we have once a month. We got to pay parking downtown, $6, $7 an hour. They don't have parking for us. It's in the middle of the week. It's on a Tuesday, where a majority of the workers are working. So they deliberately set this union meeting up where members can attend. And same thing as CTA. Our union is in the bed with CTA, with our employer. They make side deals, they make backroom deals, they go against the contract every day. They make changes to the contract without getting approval from the members. The list goes on. And Erek,
What kind of changes have they made to the contract without getting approval of the members?
well, CTA is very short on bus operators to the tune of about 600, and they're about 1,000 workers short overall throughout the system. So as a result of that, they come up with this incentive bonus to award the people that come to work. So they came up with this idea. They're going to give $1,000 to $1,000 hiring bonus to the people that come in fresh. They're going to be full-time. And then they're going to give, I think, 3% of what you made last year. They're going to give you that as a retention bonus, as they call it. They had no discussions with the workers on what we wanted as a reward for our work through the pandemic. They just agreed to it, and that was it. And yeah, I think that was horrible. I think we should have had involvement. The members should have had involvement on what we want to be rewarded with, and not just, this is what it is, take it or leave it. And that's just one instance of them going against the contract or opening up the contract or doing something that the members should have voted on. Another thing that they did at the beginning of the pandemic is we have pick runs, we have pick schedules. Well, our union president decided that it was a good idea to take people off of their pick runs and put them on the extra board without their permission or without their approval. So basically what it is you have people who pick their schedules around their life. I'm going to do this street this day, I'm going to do this street the next day. Well, CTA said the pandemic has changed this system in all kind of ways, and we need to change our system. We need to change our scheduling to adapt to the pandemic as far as the ridership goes. So we need to undo what you pick, and we need to put you on the extra board. So we had a couple members, such as Andre Thompson, and Erek might know some others, who said, no, I'm not allowing you to take me off of something that I picked. I picked this for 3 months and I should work it, and I'm not going to work the extra board. And you're breaking the contract by taking me off of my pick schedule.
Erek, you were also raising some of these issues in your election campaign. Is that why, when you were arrested, the union leadership did not really defend you?
Well, they didn't defend the process of the election either. The employer came in and removed myself, a candidate for president, and called the Chicago police and had me arrested. And I was in jail for 8 hours the day before the election. And I was ordered off of property by the city of Chicago during the election. And we just barely missed winning the election when the president just barely got over 50% and missed the runoff. As we know, in Chicago, runoff is the person who's leading the mayoral election did not win the runoff, as we know in Chicago. And so that was very much involved. And so the organization, and we're appealing to the International Union now, we're appealing to basically any kind of pro-union, pro-worker organizations to keep the employers out of workers' unions. This is affecting not just our local, not just our union, but all workers who have the right to organize and choose the leadership they want, the direction they want to go. They should not have the employer or the police or the city or the state coming in to our organization. So yeah, so what they're really worried about is that the work, our families, our generations of transit workers in Chicago will be able to actually use our organization in our interests. And so our interests are at times opposed to the employer and the city administration. You know, like Robert was talking about, we need respectful and dignified working conditions, such as bathrooms, such as safe working conditions where we're not attacked or assaulted. And that requires a bit of a force of a collective power by workers. We're seeing people excited about unions like we haven't seen in a couple generations. The last year or so, we've seen a few successful national strikes and labor struggles. That's good. I think that's a good indication that us and the Chicago Transit Authority and other transit workers it's a good situation where we can start to come together, rebuild our organizations, and fight for the working conditions we need. If you have any more specific things, I can talk about it, but that's basically what we're doing.
And Robert, do you agree with Erek that the union, and you said it earlier, is not really taking up the fight because they're going along with management?
Absolutely. I agree 100% what Erek said. Our union, for this union administration that we have in office now, they have been captured. They have been captured by the city, and they've been captured by the employer. So very rarely do the workers get what they want. And this is a contract year for us. So the union that I'm a part of, the local that I'm a part of, 241, they haven't said anything about contract negotiations besides the fact of we're in talks with CTA. Now, our sister union, 308, they have a whole schedule for the whole year on dates that they're going to meet with certain workers throughout the system. We're going to meet on this date with CTA Green Line. We're going to meet on this date with CTA Orange Line. We're going to meet on this date with the laborers. But our union, they haven't come up with anything. But we're going to make sure that it's transparent, because they don't like to be transparent. We went through this last year or 2 years ago with the new contract. There were multiple pages that weren't given to the members. There are 16 pages total. We found that out. We knew it was more than 4 pages, but they gave us 4 pages. And a couple members asked, where are the other pages? And they said, oh, this is it. This is it. We said, no, that's not it. Because first of all, it can't be 4 pages long. And second of all, your signature is not on it. So they like to play a lot of games with the members when it comes to contract negotiations. And Erek can speak more on that.
And one of the issues is the role of the international, because Erek, you're saying that the election was interfered with by management by having you arrested and preventing you from actually campaigning. And yet, and you made an appeal to the international, but the local leadership you were running against ignored that. And apparently the president of ATU, Costa, basically approved this election. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, we have Robert and I did a video on this with our coworkers. We did not appreciate that the International Union came in and certified the election before our internal process was resolved. For people who don't know, basically unions in the United States, many of them work in this kind of national federation. We have about 200,000 families in the Amalgamated Transit Union and hundreds of local unions. 241 is one of the oldest ones, and really over 100-year-old organization with a huge history. And so we have an internal democracy that has been fought over, and we've learned a lot through the experiences of that 100 years. And so some of those internal democracies say that, hey, a local union has some rights to be able to make its own decisions. And so many of the ranks are frustrated that there hasn't been that ability for us to make those choices, that many alien forces to our local have put their hands inside our union. And so we've put out the official, we've written letters of appeal through our constitution and bylaws. We have, of course, done this in front of the ranks to try to also clarify, to help the ranks to understand more of our rights inside our organization. We are a very powerful organization. Just 241, I said about 10,000 families retired and active. But as part of this national organization in Canada and the United States, we're even more potentially so. We could be going on, if we were really serious about it, this George Floyd fight could have been supported by the ATU International in a very serious way. We could have participated in the disciplined demonstrations and had a very different tenor than what the press was saying about how we were, protesters were irresponsible and smashing things. During the pandemic, again, instead of just saying, well, we're just going to follow the CDC guidelines, like our employer was saying, like the government officials were saying, the union, through our 200,000 families, have a great deal of wisdom. And we could have had a very different perspective on that and used our industrial power to force the governments to actually safeguard the population and our members and our families. With this violence that we're facing, we had I think it was near you, where 10 ATU members were killed at one of the work locations. It's about 2 years ago. And, our international said, this is horrible and so on, a tragedy, and called on the legislators to do this and that. But at some point, we need to use the power of our international union. So many workers in our local are saying, hey, why are, at our last meeting, you were there, Robert, one worker says, why are we sending $140,000 per month? And well, we need to start using that. We're seeing some people are looking at what the, like you mentioned, the Teamsters, UAW, and so on, that starting to push for potentially national strikes. We certainly saw with the rail workers, with 130,000 families that were ready to strike and were stopped by the supposedly pro-worker Democratic Party and the supposedly neutral U.S. Department of Labor. And that's what we need to start using is our power and organizing it to fight for our needs. This is an emergency situation here in Chicago with the violence. And we have a tool. Our union is a powerful tool to fight for our interests, to fight for good public transportation, to fight for good, safe working conditions for us and our families.
And of course, Chicago was we're coming up to May Day 2023. And Chicago, the fight for the 8-hour day in Chicago has its origin in Chicago. There are general strikes in France against the government trying to extend their retirement age. There's massive strikes in Britain. It seems that the struggles that you're going through and other workers are not united. There's no united front of all workers in this country. Robert, what do you think about all workers uniting together collectively and instead of being divided up industry by industry or local by local?
I think that would be a great idea, Steve. Transit workers across the United States standing together because I'm pretty sure that in Chicago, these issues that we have with full-time jobs for all, with safety issues, with bathroom issues, pretty sure we're not the only city and local dealing with this. I think that we should show our force as transit workers in this country and come together and do something national. I think it would be great.
And of course, that would educate the public that it's a national issue. It's not just an issue in Chicago. These are issues facing the entire working class. And the conditions of public workers, part-time public workers, is hurting all workers. If these part-time workers can't survive, what does that mean for the community?
Yep, that's correct. That's correct. And let the public in on, the second largest public transportation system in the world got homeless workers and got part-time workers making $15 an hour. Who can live off of $15 an hour? And that's what they're paying the people that's cleaning our buses, $15 an hour. And we need them now more than ever with COVID and other, issues that we got going on across the country. And they clean the buses for 8 hours a night, overnight shift, and they have no benefits, no health care, no vision.
And your ATU is in the Chicago Labor Council. Have they raised this in the labor movement and the labor council? I mean, action by the entire labor movement in Chicago to make this a political issue for the working class in Chicago.
No, they haven't. Like I said, we got our union misleadership is in bed with the employer. Anything that benefits the worker, they don't bring it up. They don't fight for it. We haven't had a protest. We had one protest last year from the union, and that protest was on the same day as the Justice Coalition did their protest, and they did it on a Saturday at Union Hall. I mean, at City Hall. Nobody's at work at City Hall on a Saturday, so I don't know who they think they fooling. It was a PR stunt, but this union is a joke when it comes to really fighting back, protesting, striking, all of those things. They're not interested in. They're just interested in getting along with the management, getting along with the city. That's it.
And there's also, of course, an issue of privatization of public services, contracting out to nonprofit agencies, basically trying to destroy public work, public jobs, and public services. Has the union raised that issue of privatization and outsourcing? So, Erek?
Well, it's definitely a threat because what we're seeing now is they're claiming they can't get enough workers to do the work. But we know that there's thousands of workers who've been unjustly fired, not even for safety reasons, just because they're going after us. It's intimidation of the workforce. It's trying to be able to pick off who they want and get rid of any kind of fight back.
And has the union done anything to bring these fired workers together to fight back and to say, you're not going to rehire us and pay us back pay because of the illegal retaliation that management is using?
No, they unfortunately, union officials really fall right into this business unionism form of paperwork unionism. So what they're taught, unfortunately, is that the only way that the union can fight is through the grievance arbitration system. And that system really is controlled by the employer. And furthermore, it's not just that they control, it's also that it's very isolating. Workers' rights may write a grievance with their union rep. I've unfortunately had to write hundreds of them as a union rep for the last 9 years. And the rep will try to fight the issue at the work site, like I would, and Robert's running for executive board of 103rd Street Garage, and he'll be doing that work too when he wins. Is you do the normal union work of defending your coworker, making sure that the rules aren't broken, that they're not being discriminated against. But then it goes to a written document, and that document just gets lost. And the union really doesn't even do the work of circling back to the worker and say, hey, by the way, your case is going to go to arbitration. It's going to, do you have any more information you want to tell us about it? It might be 2 or 3 years later, it might be 6 years later. Some of these grievances go a long time. For termination grievances, thousands of them. And so it's really a very broken system, but it's very debilitating to the union as an organization because it separates us, it isolates us. Instead of collectively struggling for good working conditions in which we can put in paper on our contract, instead it's just separating. Okay, well, maybe if this one worker fights, or maybe if they know that they're friends with a particular union official or a particular manager, maybe they can get some kind of justice. But the 9 out of 10 of us who don't have those special relationships, we're SOL, we're out of luck. The other thing I'll just say about the contract negotiations, Robert was talking about some of the, I think, were good things that our sister local is doing, of trying to get discussions going on with different job descriptions on the rail side. I would support that here. I think it'll be a good step forward, but it's really, I mean, Robert used the word joke. I would agree. Watching the contract negotiations for 3 terms as a board member, I'm not part of the negotiations. They explicitly keep the board members out. It's the top officers and the lawyers talking with the top CTA managers, not even the top managers, it's the labor relations people, never mind the mayor of the city, who should be coming to negotiations with our powerful union. They just jerk us around. They just claim they're having a negotiation. They're not. They'll listen to what we say, and they'll think about what they can get away with, but they're the one who put the document forward and say, take it or leave it. This is what you're going to get. And they deliberately delay it so that we don't get a contract until a year or more after our contract's up. As many workers in this workplace are starting to see, when your contract is up, that means that you may not work. No contract, no work. That's the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be preparing now so that when December 31st of 2023 happens, all of them, the mayor, everybody's really worried that the CTA ain't going to run because we're prepared to stop the buses and trains. That's what you saw with the rail workers, right? The whole world was concerned that the rail system in the United States was going to shut down. It would have a cascade effect. That's because they were prepared democratically internally within the union, and they had organized their allies in the community to say, hey, look, we need to prepare for these buses to stop and make sure our families get to work, our families get to the hospitals, et cetera. So that's the type of thing that a strong union functions. Is not this like negotiations behind closed doors. We really need to go back to the basics of unionism, in which it's really a struggle of the interest of workers against the interest of the employer. That's the basics of union. And that requires a thorough democratic forms and thorough democratic methods inside the union, not this dictatorial stuff. One last thing I'll say, you mentioned COVID. Well, a few of us came at the beginning of COVID to our mass membership meetings to say, hey guys, this is a big problem. And a lot of people didn't know, right? And we said, let's have a formal discussion. Let's call emergency meetings. Let's demand our employer does X, Y, and Z. Workers in Detroit, workers around other cities did that. And they just said, no, we're going to shut down the discussion. We might get sued if we talk about that. That's what we were told, right? In the union meetings, people's lives were lost because of the failure of the internal democracy within our union. I saw that with my own eyes as a shop steward, with losing other coworkers and who lost family members. So it's a very, very critical life and death issue. I just want to welcome Miguel to the call. I know he just got off the bus. Thank you for joining us. Miguel is a bus operator. He's also ran for first vice president of our union.
So Miguel, we're kind of wrapping it up, but why don't you talk about the issues that you as a union member, activist, somebody who ran for office face today? Your contract is coming up at the end of this year. What's being done to organize, and what are the conditions you face? And is the union prepared for really defending the membership?
I really don't think that our union is ready for anything, just because the way they're existing with the company, we need help as a union. I just don't understand how, we're a union and we're not getting what we need as operators.
Well, you were calling for that in your election. What were some of your issues in your election that you raised?
Some of the issues that happened during the elections were problems with security, safety issues in the workforce, in the front line. I was always asking for better shields and maybe two-way radios. We're not getting none of that. Our method of communicating with dispatch is a problem. And things in the city is just becoming more and more hostile as it progresses here, especially now that we're getting a new mayor who's also possibly he's interested in defunding the police, which is a big issue for our safety as well.
Well, it seems like there's unlimited money for police.
Right.
And and social workers, mental health, that's off the table.
Right. My wife is actually graduating this month as a school counselor, and she's saying that she's not going into the city to work. I tell you, a lot of people are leaving, running away from the city.
Because it's getting dangerous. It is dangerous for the workers and the students.
Correct.
Is this an emergency situation for workers in Chicago?
It sure is. I believe it is. People are leaving the city as day by day. They're eloping.
And Erek, there's an emergency situation and the union leadership refused to deal with it. What happens?
Well, there's an internal struggle and there's an external struggle. We're adults and we're very amazing people, our 10,000 families. And we're trying to organize ourselves, get together with good working people to provide an alternative direction. and also we just need to do it. You know, if the union officials aren't going to do it, we can organize and do it. I think Robert was talking about some of the demonstrations that some of his coalition and others are organizing. We're going to have a speak out on Tuesday, you know, when I'm in the courthouse, and they're charging me with trespass while I was a candidate for president. They're charging me with trespass for being on the property campaigning with Miguel was with me a few of those times. And so we're gonna have a speak out after that, and we're gonna be discussing, like we're doing right here, we're gonna be discussing our issues and making it as clear as possible to the public what's going on. One thing I was hoping Miguel could talk about, he was talking to me earlier about the scheduling, how he's, you know, we're really being harassed by this quantitative analysis. They got this global positioning system on us, and they're making us fill all this paperwork. We don't even have enough time at the end of the run to use the bathroom. I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, because you faced that today, Miguel, on the bus. I think, Robert, you did too.
Yeah. As I was talking to you earlier about this situation, they usually every 3 months they let us pick a new schedule just to bring us back to our sanity, you know, because we're frontline workers. We work the same routes day in, day out for 3 months, and we hope to every 3 months be able to change our schedules. Unfortunately, somehow, some way, it's basically the job of the union officials to look over our new runs that the CTA puts out, you know, and it appears that they didn't do that this time, because there's runs that I've had before, and somehow, some way, they added another trip to their route, or they shorten our what they call the layover point, which is at the end of the line. You know, that's the time we have for ourselves to bring us back to our our sanity, because in one whole route we have to deal with a lot of things: fare, disturbances, aggressive customers, a lot of things we have to go through. So usually what we as frontlines, we like to use that time frame to, at the end of the line, to bring us back to together.
Get some rest time, recuperate, so you can
Yes.
do your job.
Right, or be able to use the restroom. But unfortunately, that time frame has shortened, and as time goes on, it keeps getting smaller and smaller. So by the time we get to the end of the line, it's already time to take off back the other way. So we're in the process, and I feel I find myself filling out what they call the AVAS dispute forms. Basically, you're disputing the reason why you had to leave a terminal 5, 3, 10 minutes late. And if you don't, you are going to get a disciplinary action for leaving the terminal late and stuff like that, which is ridiculous.
So you're saying your union officials are basically, because of either incompetence or because of being pro-management, are allowing the workers to be stressed out, right? By the fact that they're not making sure that they're giving enough time for the bus drivers to have proper time, so that you'll have health and safety, and you'll be able to do your job properly. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Something like that. Our union officials, if they were on the ball game, they would literally look at our runs and determine, hey, this run is not good because at this time.
Well, isn't that their job?
It is their job. It is, but they failed to do that these few couple of picks, schedule picks. So I believe that they need to get back on the ball with that, and to look at our new runs that CTA puts out, because they're doing things like that because of manpower. They're shortening our time at the end of the line, or they're adding more trips because there's not enough staffing to cover that other trip that was supposed to be covered by either the follower or the leader. And
if they paid $40 an hour, decent wages, you think you would have a problem with staffing?
That would be nice, but
would you have a problem with staffing if they're paying $40 an hour?
No.
Okay, so the problem is not that there aren't workers out there to do the job. The problem is they're not paying enough for the workers to do the job.
Correct. and just giving us some more time frames.
And better conditions.
Safe for working conditions, yeah.
Steve, I'd like to speak on that.
Go.
Yeah, the issue is not the pay. Well, the issue might be the pay because we only get to see 50% of our income in our bank accounts every 2 weeks. But the issue is that the CTA has a toxic work culture, and they need to treat the workers right that they do have. They're going to get the 600 missing operators that they need, but they won't get it because word around town is CTA is not treating their workers right, and they're putting their workers through unsafe working conditions, such as these 3-minute layovers, such as these no brick and mortar bathrooms, porta potty bathrooms. Who wants to use a porta potty bathroom and when the weather is 0 degrees outside and everything's a block of ice? No heat, no security, broken locks, no running water, no hot running water. Come on now, we're in 2023 and they can't figure out, after 75 years of existence, they can't figure out how to build a brick and mortar bathroom at every bus turnaround, at every end of the line. They can't.
But these politicians, these Congress people and these politicians are voting for trillions for war. They got unlimited money for war in this country.
Yeah.
I mean, the infrastructure is falling apart in the United States. They can't even have bathrooms for the workers.
Yeah.
Yet they're voting trillions for war. What do you think about that? The government voting all this money for war, Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, you have to examine, are you smarter than the 5th grader? That's what I say to a lot of these situations, because our unionist leadership, they certainly don't seem smarter than a 5th grader. And CTA is spending millions of dollars rebuilding the red, purple, all these infrastructure upgrades that they're doing. They're spending 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars on upgrades to the rail system, but they can't spend less than $1 million for a bathroom. Make it make sense.
Okay, well, I want to thank you all for joining us on Work Week. I think we've covered some of the issues. And obviously, this is not just about Chicago transit workers. It's about all transit workers and all workers in this country. So thanks for joining us on Work Week.
Thanks for speaking out, guys.